Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome to another episode at Mic'd Up. I'm your host, Omar. Thank you once again for joining and tuning in. So we've been 3 episodes in, and alhamdulillah, I've had a great response. So we appreciate the love and support. As always, we're here live in Haramain Studios. So we want to thank Asif Bhai and the entire Haramain TV studio team for allowing us to use the studio for season 3. So if you're not connected with Haramain, follow them on Facebook, Haramain TV, as well as on all IPTV channel, IPTV boxes. So please make sure that you connect with that as well. And on Instagram, you can follow them at haramain.tv. Once again, make sure for all true Islamic content, follow Haramain TV. For ourselves, you're watching on Mic'd Up 416 on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you get up to date with everything that is coming out new, and you stay in contact with us in regards to that. But please make sure that you put your comments out there. Send us your comments. You can follow us on Instagram at Mic'dUp416 as well, for weekly updates and new podcasts premieres. So please stay connected with that. We got a great episode in store for you all today, and I'm joined with 2 lovely brothers. They're actually brothers. Over to my right are both of them. We have Hafiz Millat, Hafiz Yahya, that has finally joined us for an episode. And beside them, their younger brother, Hafiz Bilal. So to the Hufaz, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, how are you brothers?
Alhamdulillah.
Hafiz Bilal was on the first one, and Hafiz Yahya is making his guest star appearance today. So alhamdulillah.
For the record, I've been here. I've just been behind the scenes, so I've been present for every episode.
Yes, I have. I've called you out in the back, but it's good because the one good thing from last season is that you obviously had some great insight when you were filling in and being a part of the show. So I know you do a great job behind the scenes, but you also have some good insight, and people actually listen to what you have to say.
People need to see both sides.
Yeah. And Hafiz Bilal is, always with me, but it's good that he's always coming on and jumping on, especially on this episode. So I want to welcome the brothers and thank you for your time. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
So, conspiracy theories. This is an interesting one because I want to mix it with stuff that we've been doing. So not we've been doing. We're not conspiracy theories. But I just want to make sure that we're touching on both angles. So the dunyavi, for the part of the worldly aspect and what we see and conspiracy theories that we see around the world. But also at the end, I want to touch on a little bit Islamic conspiracy theories as well. So people obviously get a little taste of what conspiracy theories are in the Islamic world as well. So I want to jump right into it. Hafiz Yahya, I'm going to go with you first. The first one, I think when I think conspiracy theories, I got to think 9/11 and what happened in New York. So let's start there.
I mean, it's over 20 years, 23 years now, still a hot topic. So here's my take on the whole situation. It obviously planes crashed into the tower, but there's a lot more detail that's been missing. There's a lot of things that don't add up from what the story that was given to us versus what the actual facts are. And I'm not going to go into all the facts, but if you want to do some good reading or, understanding, there's a gentleman by the name of Jesse Ventura. He's former governor, former Navy SEAL. He did a series and he did a couple books.
Was he a wrestler too?
At one point in time, he was a wrestler. But he did a series and he wrote a couple of books. And all he did in the books was state facts that he found and he did his own investigation on.
Okay.
And based on that, he doesn't make any decisions for you. He just says, here's the facts. Now you decide for yourself. And so after reading that or even doing your own research, there's a lot of things that didn't add up. Right? It doesn't make sense how 2 buildings who had planes hit them fall like they're being demolished. Right? Secondly is that, another thing that was found much later was that, there was an insurance policy that was taken a year before on both the World Trade Centers.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things that don't add up to the whole situation where it's just described as a terror attack. Right. But I also say this, that history is always written by the victor. Right. So in this part of the world, the government or whoever it is that controls the media, they write the story, they tell the tale. And so obviously, if everyone's watching that 5 or 6 o'clock news, and it's being told by whoever pays the bill, whoever writes the story, whoever the victor is,
Yeah.
then they're going to tell you what they want you to know.
True. So, Hafiz Bilal, I'm going to ask you straight forward. Was it a terror attack that happened to the Twin Towers in New York during 9/11?
So I don't think so.
Okay.
Me personally, I'd say it's inside job. But
Okay.
like Hafiz was saying here, it's whoever controls the media gets to decide who it was or
Right.
what it was, right? And I think just adding on to like in terms of facts, like I think within a couple of years ago or just last year, someone said that just a couple of days leading up to the Twin Tower attack,
Right.
there was also an attack that occurred in the Pentagon as well. There was a bombing
yeah.
that happened that opened up the walls in the Pentagon.
Correct. Yeah.
And that was to cover up that there were apparently billions of dollars missing in accounting
Oh, wow.
in terms of what expenditure in the Pentagon and in the
Right.
U.S. And then 2 days later, after that sort of conference or after that sort of story came out that there were billions of dollars missing,
Right.
a couple days later, the Twin Towers was attacked.
Interesting. What I have an issue with the 9/11 is a couple of things, and you guys touch on a few things, right? Like Jesse Ventura's facts in regards to that. But one of the things that I find is on the left hand side. So meaning if the plane actually connected dead center, that all the images and the videos that we've seen, if it connected, the building should have fell over into what street? Wall Street.
Mm.
And that would have taken out the entire financial district and collapsed the financial district easily. But that didn't happen. To Hafiz's point, is that it fell down as if it was being it's a demolition.
Yeah.
So that was number one. Number two, that no Jewish person was at work that day, and they were told not to come to work, and that's a proven fact that people were off, and they actually. When they tried to locate the bodies and whatever bodies that were found missing, they presumed that they were dead, and then they plus and minus who was missing from there, and they actually located those people, and they were told that they were not supposed to come to work.
So here's the other thing, since you mentioned the money.
Yeah,
America is a war-driven economy.
yeah,
Sad to say, but if there isn't any war, any fighting, any sort of conflict that isn't happening,
right,
there's no money being pumped into the economy, right? I mean, they spend trillions of dollars on that army of theirs.
yeah,
And if you so-called have the best defense in the world,
yeah.
how did you not see two planes, not one, but two, minutes apart,
Yeah.
hitting two of your landmark buildings, right?
That is a very good point. And but I want to take it just before that. How did you let 12 so-called terrorists on the plane and with X-Acto knives or whatever it was, and they were able to systematically just bring down two towers and like put a stronghold against the U.S. government or the U.S. population and stuff, and pretty much put them on a chokehold. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up, right? Meaning that it is an inside job. And lastly, that when I think George Bush Jr., he was the president of the United States at the time, and he was in Florida at a school reading to children. And when he was reading to them and he was told about, the Twin Towers just got crashed or came down and they were hit, the book, first of all, was upside down. And second, he had no like, oh my God, I need to get up and go or anything like that.
No sense of urgency.
None.
Yeah.
Zero. So that also tells me that this is not, like he knew, obviously. They're not stupid. They knew that this was happening.
Right. It's like it's a distraction tactic, basically,
Right.
in order for now to kind of hide something that's going on, whether it's money, whether it's to just use that as an excuse to invade another country and start the so-called war on terror, X, Y, and Z. But it's a distraction, and it's sad to say there was a lot of innocent lives that were lost, right? And condolences for that.
100%.
But it's sad that governments or people are the ones doing this just for whatever financial gain, whatever it may be. But it's sad to see that people have to suffer and lose lives for other people's agendas.
Yeah, 100%.
And what was another consequence of that so-called 9/11 attack is security concerns, right? Who was impacted most by that?
Omar Qadri.
It's true. We've had first-hand experience
at the airport.
We've had first-hand experience of how you've been affected. But
let me tell you this: if you're ever flying with this gentleman, come a few hours early.
No, I think if you ever fly with the pair of you to leave, to go separately.
Look, I thought I was gonna get it, but I had the easy way out.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Omar Qadri got the.
That was the worst experience, and it still is the worst experience. Every time I go,
hasn't only happened once.
Yeah, never. It just constantly, excuse me, sir, onto the side, right? And it's always when I'm with Hafiz Yahya.
No. We've driven across the border without any issues.
Yeah,
so.
Flying is a problem.
Yeah.
You see guys with beards and flying, and
the first name is Muhammad, or last name, or first name is Omar. You know what? And the funny thing is, they don't hide this. Basically, your airlines, quote unquote, is the one that sends you for the screening.
Yeah.
So it's not even the airport themselves; it's the airline that already says, okay, you fit under a certain criteria, right? And I've told this before to the security guards. I said, listen, I don't have a problem if just because you think my name is Muhammad, or my first name is Muhammad, you're holding me for secondary screening because you have this kind of delusion about all Muhammads. But just tell me that. Be upfront. Don't cover around the bush and just say, oh, you were randomly selected. There's no random selection.
100%. I agree. 100%. Anything else for 9/11?
Yeah, no. So I was going to say another reason why I brought up that so-called consequence of security and whatnot. Yeah. You'll see that after 9/11 occurred, 10, 15 years later down the line, America's usage of taxpayers' money for defense purposes and building their army and military and security outweighed. So they're top on the defense expenditure. The next 25 countries, they spent more than all 25 combined.
Oh my gosh.
And 24 of 25, which are allies.
Wow.
If they stop spending on their military for like a day, they'd be able to recover a lot of that debt that they have, right? They can actually bring their country out of debt by stop spending on the military for a few days.
Here's the thing. It's because you say that is Donald Trump. As much as you hate the guy, or you might hate the guy, when he was in power, he was the first president since Bill Clinton. So that was Bill Clinton, George W. Jr., and Obama, and then Trump. So from them, he was the only one that didn't wage war against anybody, and he brought troops home. And they were actually running flat, meaning they weren't in debt and they weren't in the positive either. They weren't in the black. They were just, he brought them there, and then obviously we're not going to talk about U.S. politics, meaning what happened there, because that's a conspiracy in itself. But they obviously didn't want him in power, and that's it. But he's a smart guy. He's business-minded. Everybody else doesn't come with, sure, they went to Ivy schools, business schools and such, but they didn't obviously have the brains of operating multiple multi-million-dollar businesses like Trump did. But anyways, another one that comes to mind, and I think Muslims fear it the most. So kind of like me at the airport, we get this racial profiling and stuff like that because of who was labeled after 9/11 of being the terror group to be afraid of and such. And Islam obviously got the brute end of the stick because of it. Was Taliban and Al Qaeda. So why don't we talk about those groups for a second? Like after 9/11. You see the formation of Taliban and Al Qaeda and stuff like that.
Well, here's the thing: where did these groups come from? Right? Look at the history of Bin Laden. You'll see he was ex-CIA. He was trained. Right. A lot of these guys were. Right, because again, there's ultimately some sort of bigger picture or bigger plan that's happening behind the scenes that you don't get to see. Right. And I'll touch, and the way I can tell you this is, for example, JFK's assassination. Right. A lot of people believe the CIA was involved in that.
Okay.
And the reason being is because JFK and then Nixon and the people that came just before JFK, they had actually wanted to, control the CIA because they were running black ops. They were running things that shouldn't have, normal people or normal governments would not do. Right. In order to manipulate the world and to kind of bring it under their own agenda. And that's a reason why people believe JFK might have been shot from
his own people.
His own people.
Right.
But it's the same thing. It's you train these guys. Because you're not gonna find someone just randomly in the desert knowing how to work a rifle or anything like that. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
You can't expect someone to have military training just like that,
Right.
or be a combatant, right? Secondly, and this is the biggest thing that still doesn't make sense to me till this day. How is a man supposedly sitting in a cave uploading HD video to all your news channels?
Right.
That makes zero sense. Where is he getting the cameras? Where is he getting the internet connection? There was no, Starlink or whatever like that before.
Yeah.
How is he doing this? Right?
I'm just baffled. The fact that to your point, but I go, what is he doing in Afghanistan? He's Arab. He's an Arab, and he's a leader of Pashtun and Farsi speaking so-called terrorists, and living in a cave and geared up with all this AK-47 and stuff. Where are they getting this from? Right? So I understand, like, when they fought Russia, the Soviet Union, the USSR at that time, and George Bush Sr. was president of the United States, and he gave them the military equipment to offset, obviously, USSR, the Soviet Union at the time. So, but where are you getting all these Kalashnikovs, the AK-47s, and all of this, sitting in a mountain, to your point, and you're an Arab? What are you doing in Afghanistan and leading a regime? And it has to be set up. We'll let the viewers, decide, but do your research and think about actually what has been happening. But Al-Qaeda and Taliban, what was the reason that U.S. at that time needed to blame Al-Qaeda and Taliban for what had happened? Because someone had to take the fault, or take the fall, sorry. Who was, like, why them?
So you'll see this as a trend and a sort of theme with America's affairs after 2001 leading up to where we are now. Like, for now, I'll say Ukraine, for example. But we'll go back to then. They needed one reason to justify why they were going into war, or why they had to have a wartime economy. Another thing is they also had to justify, after spending that much money, we also need an existing enemy, so to say, right? How can a first world power not defeat a third world country, right? Or not go into a third world country and resolve whatever conflict or issues so-called are happening there, right? So under the disguise of democracy, you have America invading different countries, right? For what reason? To gain economical benefit. So you'll say for the region of Afghanistan, for example, opium, right? Yeah. That's a big product in that country or region.
Huge.
Right? You'll go on to the later countries that America goes to war with, so-called, and in the disguise of building democracy and fighting for the so-called people.
Yeah.
Oil, right? And Ukraine, just to take a stand against Russia, for example, right? But you sort of see that there's a sort of trending theme or underlying theme that sort of justifies a first world country's reason to invade another country.
Right.
Well, that, and then they have to sell I call it a sap story, right? To their people. Because here's the thing, for example, I don't know if you watched the UFC fight last night, but Covington, we watched it, right? Yeah. So Covington was, even though he lost, he was still, Donald Trump was at that fight. So he was giving a big shout out. He's like, Donald Trump's going to make this place great again. And like, shout out to all the soldiers, fighting for our freedom and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, how brainwashed are you?
Right.
I said, they're not fighting for your freedom or anything. Most of them, majority of them come back with PTSD and they're traumatized, and they wish they never went in the first place 100%. Because the problem is they don't tell you what your mission is until you actually get there. And once they see that, no sane human being is going to just want to kill or take lives of other people for no reason. Right. And so, it's like, you've brainwashed a lot of these people, and you sold, a really sappy, sad story to your public to justify your misdoings, and you justify the harm that you're causing.
Right.
But why? It's so that some people can get money and profit, and and that's what it is at the end of the day.
Do you believe, and I know you guys touched on the secular aspect of it, the worldly view of it, which I agree with, but do you agree that they needed somebody to blame greater than just a secular world, and it had to be Mazbi, meaning they picked Islamic people to blame for that purpose, to lower, I guess you can say, the respect for Islam, so to speak? Would you agree in that aspect? Because you saw, like, when all of this happened, they said terror attacks, all Muslims, beards, turbans, so on and so forth. How the media portrayed it, and it came down to increase of, like, fights and potential like attacks on Muslims all over the world. We've seen it in London where women were getting kicked down the subway stations. We saw it here in Toronto. We saw it everywhere, all over the world. There's bans of the hijab and stuff. Do you think it was an agenda to get to this point? Now, you guys look at it from 20 years to now, and systematically, Islam, whether it's Islamic attire or appearance, whether it's Islam in general as a Muslim, the name of Islam has been rubbed in the dirt for 20 years because of this. Would you agree? Would you agree to that?
I would agree, because here's the thing: you got to look at those countries and the places where they were going to get these resources, or they wanted to extract these resources from, and then you look at it. Their democracy was Islam. Their identity was Islam. You know, the problem is on this side of the world, in the Western part, secularism, right? It's the identity of a person, right? So they took one right out of the British and the French playbook. It's divide and conquer. Right? So if you cause division, because they see it as a threat, right? So they need to first get rid of that so they can bring their ideologies, their views and everything like that, you know, that, women are oppressed, for example, or like everyone should have the right to vote and this, that, and the other. And it's like, first of all, where did you take these ideas from? You took them from the religious sides, and then you basically said, we're not going to put any name or give any attributes to the actual author of this, Allah, but we're gonna basically make it our own, and we're gonna kind of try to label everyone universally like this. So they try to strip the identity of those people, and by doing so, you have to it's bad press. You have to give bad press to that, and you have to give a reason. You have to give, like I said, that sob story, right? That they're all evil. Muslims are all evil. They're all out to get you. They're all gonna blow you up or whatever it is, right? So that's what they're instilling into their own people. So that way they have, everyone's against Muslims. Right. But it's funny because, that actually gave us the biggest and the easiest platform for us to spread our religion. Because all the imams, our elders and people, they actually converted more people in that time than they did previous to that.
It built inquiring minds.
It did.
Inquiring minds. And I like what you were saying, but what do you think there was a negative effect to that people might have left Islam? Might have been scared for their identity as a Muslim. Did it hurt us? Because Hafiz Saab just said it gave us a positive aspect, meaning we gained. But I know a lot of people that left Islam because of that. Like we heard stories and such. So Hafiz Saab, Hafiz Bilal.
I think the negative aspects here go into two parts. One, those that left Islam, and two, those who were scared to practice their identity. Right? Those that were in fear of, being attacked where they are, doesn't matter, irrelative to where they are, but being attacked and being labeled out for being a Muslim or practicing Muslim. But to add on to Hafiz Saab's point, right? You're going into a foreign country where there's already a foreign population, right? Yeah. Now, it just so happens to be that in that region, it's that foreign population believes in Islam, right? How do you set it up so that when you invade that country and there may be backlash, there's always going to be backlash if you go into someone else's country. The effective response is going to be, hey, let me fight for my land. Let me defend my land, right? And just let me preface by saying we condemn any killing of any kind before it goes to that point. 100%. But you had people maybe rebelling or fighting back. You might have had skirmishes with the with the American forces or just whatever it happened to be, right? We need to destabilize that sort of idea that we shouldn't have a sort of backlash, or we shouldn't have people fighting back against us for whatever reason that we're invading. And to add on to what Hafiz was saying, how do we get our own people to follow into that, right? We'll create lies, we'll create misconceptions. What's the easiest way to break down Islam's motives for fighting back? Jihad. Of course. Right? They already have something in their religion that enables them to fight back. That's what they say, right? But you have people back home who are now getting enraged or getting emotional on this topic or whatever, and you'll have these sort of attacks like you were mentioning in London and different areas of the world that also creates something beneficial for America as well, creates funding for them. Now you have people that want to go with their agenda or push their agenda with them, right? You no longer have to worry about our own people fighting against us. Now you just have to worry about that foreign concept.
See, what else I think one of the biggest things that was caused, it gave fuel to those people who, I would say, in the depths of their heart, hated Muslims. Now gave them a platform to kind of come out with it. And then you've seen an increase of like Quran burnings, you know. Then you've seen the rape of women, etc., ripping out the hijabs on subways. That happened here, actually, by the way. They used to happen line 1 on TTC. Shout out to Mohsen Bhai. TTC. But it happened. They ripped off hijabs, and we just seen. I just want to know, is it Islam is always going to prevail? But to that layman who's listening, or the laywoman who's listening, and you know, sometimes it's kind of like, you know, can I go outside with shalwar kameez? Because they think that people are going to watch us, or so on and so forth, or jubba, or grow a beard, or wear a topi, or an imama, etc. For those people who want to do, who have the shauq and jazba for it, but sometimes they shy away from it. Has all of that systematically been working against us, or is it not? Or what can we say to those people? Because I think that's something that we should touch on. To those people, that you don't worry, that Islam is going to prevail always. But what advice can we give to those people when they see this, especially now because social media is so powerful? Sorry, go ahead.
So the first thing I'm going to say, and you know, touching back to your previous point, is that there were some negative side effects, right? But that's always going to be happening in this situation. It's going to be pros and cons. Right. The pros outweigh the cons. The reason why we have these negative effects is because people, one, are scared, right? Two, they're scared because they don't understand why. A lot of people, and this is the sad state that it is now, are born into Muslim households.
Right.
They don't know their identity. They just know the culture of the identity.
Right.
So if they understand why they do things, how to back yourself up, and how to actually tell someone else what I'm doing, how explain why they're doing it, you won't have that fear. You won't have that identity crisis. Then you'll feel that, hey, listen, I can still be a Canadian or American or someone in the Western world and be a Muslim.
Right.
But I am a Muslim first, and then comes that second identity. Right? They can coexist because they both preach the same values.
Right.
But the problem is, the thing is that Islam has to come first for the Muslim people, right? But it's about that knowledge. If you understand why you're doing something,
right,
you're fine. You're happy. You're content.
Very well.
But if you don't, you're going to be scared. And then because now the pressure's on you, ball's in your court. How are you going to react? Yeah. Most people will just say, you know what? They're right. I'm just going to fade and blend in with the system and, you know, be someone that's silent, right? And that's it. And, you know, and that's sad, right? Because as a Muslim, the first thing we're told is to read and to gain knowledge and to absorb it and to practice it. So if we don't have that, we're hypocritical. We can't even say that, you know, we're doing our duties to our Muslim identity properly, let alone the Western identity.
Very good. Hafiz, Bilal.
Say two things. I say one thing is a reason why we're scared too is we lack the knowledge to answer people's questions. We don't know ourselves why we're doing such and such thing.
Right.
We lack the ability to answer if someone asks us, hey, what are you doing? Just out of curiosity. You don't have the ability to answer that. The second thing I'd say, the same system that allows people to express their, I'm going to say ignorance or emotions, also gives you the safety to practice your religion.
Of course.
Right? So that's a sort of little paradox there, is that regardless of what people are doing around you, you still have the ability and the right to practice your religion and to preach who you are.
Right. I liked what Hafiz Yahya said in the beginning part of the talk. And he says that they control their narrative, right? Because they control the media. Social media it could be just one thing that happened, for example, in Belgium, right? And it would be small, in a town of maybe, let's say 50,000 people. And they will blow up and it'll go worldwide, and all of a sudden, and it creates that culture shock. So the scare, I mean, it could be something small. It doesn't happen all the time. We live obviously in the West, and all of us were born here, and we grew up here, and we live here. How often do we see, you guys went to university, going from buses to trains, etc., going to work downtown, etc. So you've seen public. So how many times have you been attacked because you're a Muslim and stuff like that? So I think the hype is greater, and I think a lot of people understand, and I think what's happening now around the world, it's actually giving a little bit more light to Islam, and it's working in our favor, as it always is. But I think more so now when people are, you know, wanting to get closer to the religion and so on and so forth. But I think social media, I think we need to relax and understand that they control social media. Whatever they want you to see, they're going to show you.
Well, here's one more thing. So when these attacks happen, all the Muslims, they run to the mosque or the imam or, you know, to the masjid and say, what's the statement we're going to give? What are we going to say? How are we going to comment about this? Okay, that's great. The masjid, the imam issued a statement, as they should.
Yeah.
However, the next question that the public should ask is, how do we go about dealing with this? How do we actually implement a plan in all the Muslims' lives,
Right.
practically,
Right.
in order to be, because we have to face this. It's not the first time it's going to happen. It's not going to be the last time.
100%.
So how do we deal with this? How do we show our neighbors, our people around us, that this isn't the narrative about Islam
Right.
and the correct narrative? And that's the part we're lacking. We do the thing, hey, we need to issue a statement. We'll get a nice letter, or we'll get the imam to in a khutbah. Those are words. Those are great. And they need to be there. But there's no action on it. There's no implementation on it. Right. And that's the biggest thing. And that's why we have this, circle, basically. Something happens, we react to it, but we're not preventative of it.
That's smart. Hafiz Bilal?
No, I don't think I can add to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that was good
Yeah.
because I think I wouldn't say we're proactive. I think the Muslim, as a Muslim community as a whole, is very reactive. And they look for our leaders and such to say something after something has already happened. But it's always good to be, in the defense and work towards your offense. Anyways, we'll move on. So, but not about the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They had a leader, very, very rich leader. He constructed the clock tower, did he? His company. Anyways, Osama bin Laden. And there was a time I remember growing up that that name, like, either pissed people off or they scared the heck out of them. And then you see, after all this bombardment by the U.S. government and all of that, we had a first black president in America, Barack Hussein Obama. And he went in and cleaned it all up, and he was the hero, quote unquote, because Osama was dead. It just didn't sit right with me for two reasons, and I'll turn it over to you guys in a second, is that all of a sudden, they're like, we're going into Afghanistan again, after you destroyed that beautiful country, and you raped their women, you pretty much desecrated villages, opened fire on multiple villages in Afghanistan, and you left, or you didn't leave, you stayed there, but meaning there was no war. And then all of a sudden, Barack Obama comes and he goes back in and wages war, and he's destined to find Osama. And brother Osama, he's not my real brother. I'm being sarcastic, just in case I don't want no fatwas being put on me. Osama bin Laden, Mr. Osama bin Laden, was then in Pakistan, and then Barack found him, or the U.S. government found him, and they put him out to sea, and they said, we killed him, and that was it. And they washed their hands of it, and he was gone. The reason I'm bringing this up, and the conspiracy behind it, is as fast as he was brought into the picture, he was, on a snap of a finger, taken out of the picture. Why?
Well, here's the thing. When you're a puppet and your show is over or the season's done, you got to be changed. Yeah. That's just how it is.
And then they had a new season.
They had a new season.
And that same presidency, you had ISIS come out. It was a new season.
Okay. Right? Because everyone's tired. 20 years it's been. And here's the other thing. Why did it take you 20 years to find the guy? I mean, there could only be so many caves where you can upload a high definition video from, right? I'm pretty sure you guys have satellites and drones and everything to find that. It's not hard, right? And you guys, I mean, it doesn't make sense. One. Two is, okay, fine. You found him. Apparently you killed him. And then no one wanted his body. So what'd you do? You dumped him in the ocean. But you didn't even show anyone.
You know what he said? He said, we gave him the Islamic burial. It's not the Islamic burial. So I don't know how people fell for this. The Islamic burial is not to put them at sea. Obviously, it's the ground. And he was wrapped in this black bag or whatever, like a body bag. And he was just chucked. No pictures, no nothing. We don't know who he was. Like, what happened? And he was taken away. But I like what you said. That the show's over, a new show has to come about.
Exactly. Yeah. Because here's the thing, people are eventually going to catch on. Yeah. And then they're going to start questioning the government. But hey, it's been like 20 years. Like, what's going on? So they need that sap story. Oh my God, America's our heroes found them, Yeah. And so that's what it is, right? And now eventually the other ones came out, the ISIS and all the other ones, Boko Haram. Nice. So, yeah, all of them, So it's going to be a continuing cycle. right?
I just, I find it very hard that people fall for this because obviously talking to you guys obviously know what you're talking about, and it seems that you understand. We're gonna probably get into one of them that we're gonna have ikhtilaf on, but for the most part, we get it. How do people believe this stuff, Hafiz Bilal? How can you believe this? All of a sudden, he comes in, boom, he's in a body bag, he's thrown into the water, and it could have been rocks in there. Like we don't know. Nobody saw anything. Nobody testified to it. He comes on stage, on camera, and he says, "Yeah, we found him, and he's done, and we give him Islamic burial to put him up to sea." How do people fall for this? How can people fall for this?
They're gullible.
Yeah.
Right? The Americans, the true patriotic Americans, believe in two things.
Yeah.
America and America. Right? And who's the star of America? Obviously, he's going to be their president.
Yeah.
So whatever their president says or preaches or relates to them, they're going to believe as true. They don't need evidence. They don't need no proof.
Yeah.
Right? They killed Osama I don't know how many times. But I remember, this is why I tell Omar, I was young at the time, when all this happened. I said, I remember Osama dying 3 times. Right? I think he died twice in the Bush presidency and then he died once in Obama's.
Yeah.
And that was the final time we heard of him.
We got him.
Right? So that doesn't make sense to me, right? And then you have people that they're gullible, right? Another thing is you also see this as a trend with
You think it's gullible though, or do you think it's just lack of just common sense? I don't think it's gullible.
No. It's a building, right? Let me just finish this thought right here. And you'll see this. I'll bring this up later on. I know we're going to have ikhtilaf on one of the next topics too, right? But when you have media preaching or presenting one story by the same script, all media channels and all avenues saying the exact same thing, never a side or another view on the opposite side.
Yeah.
And you have social media saying the exact same thing, people only have that source of information, and they're only going to go off of that, right? Yeah. And that source or that representation is only presenting one thing. They're only going to believe that one thing because everybody's telling them that's what you need to believe.
Right. So were you saying something?
Here's the problem with majority of people in the Western world.
Yeah.
You go, wake up, you eat, you go to work, you come home from work, you eat, you'll turn on the 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock news, and that's your primary source of information. Your primary source of information is the media outlets. Yeah. That's the problem. You don't do your own reading. You don't do your own vetting to see, hey, does this fact or whatever they're telling me, actually, is it real? Is it true? Is it, something that is factual, or is it written from a subjective lens or a subjective narrative? And so that's the biggest thing. Majority of Americans, Fox News, CNN.
Owned by the White House.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where they're getting their news from. And that's what they're getting their information from. So if your primary source tells you something, and I'm going to relate this, and this is kind of a teaser for Sufi cults. If your sheikh or your primary source is telling you one thing and that is not true, or you didn't fact check it, or you didn't ask for the references, right? 99% it's not true, and it's not going to take you to heaven, or it's not going to take you to the promised land, or whatever, whatever it is. But, and we're going to take the Sufi cult is going to come up very soon, but kind of a teaser. It's the same thing. It's a cult, right? Yeah. People have been brainwashed into believing whatever the news channel tells me is true, and they've done their job because for them, they've sold you a story that gets your attention and you believe the facts that they tell you.
Viewership.
But exactly, right? And for them, at the end of the day, it's more of a numbers game. They don't care about you. Yeah. They don't care if they're feeding you the right thing or the wrong thing. And it's the same thing. History is always written by the victor. Whoever pays the bills for these news or these media outlets tells the story.
Right.
They censor what they want to. They tell you what they want to. Right. And you feel like just because they're saying it, it's got to be true because apparently they did the investigation.
Yeah.
But did they?
No.
Right?
Very nice. I just want to say this. There's actually a principle we have in Deen, and you're in cybersecurity, so you know this principle very well. It's trust but verify. You always verify.
Actually, it's called zero trust now.
Yeah.
Right?
To an extent, but I'm just relating it more because it's the same principle you'll find in Deen as well, is to trust but verify the source as well. Right? And that's for the people that are watching this and getting consumed by the sort of media that they're seeing or that they're viewing, right?
At the end of the day, I think it comes down to making sure that you fact check. Don't just take it for what it's being portrayed to you. Take it with a grain of salt, and then go back and use. But we are so blinded by, oh no, Hafiz Yahya told me it's got to be true, right? It's scripture if he told me, right? But that's what it's going to come to. Sufi cults, I like it. That's what it's going to come down to. Sufi cults is going to be a good one, inshallah. But I want to move on. To the next one, and this is before all three of our times. I wasn't even born at this time. Is when Mr. Neil Armstrong, another brother, I believe he was I believe he was Muslim, or he was inquiring about Islam. That he went to the moon. First of all, did he? Did somebody land on the moon? I think me and Hafiz Bilal were talking about this on the way to the studio, and we said, like, how did they get there? Meaning, we know how they got there, but how did they get, like, pictures? And if you see the picture of Neil Armstrong, was it true? Where did the camera come from? Did the camera work on the moon? So on and so forth. So first, let's start with, did he go there?
So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to say he did.
Okay,
And
I believe.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that.
and there's a few reasons. Now, a lot of people bring that picture question up. Is if Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, who was taking his picture? Right?
Had to be a second.
Neil Armstrong was actually the one taking the picture. That was his colleague that was coming off. So Neil Armstrong got off first. And if you actually go into the story, into their accounts, that's what they say. He said Neil got off first. And then, he took the picture of the famous picture, the one you see where the astronaut's getting off the shuttle or that ship. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. But again, it's a lot of misinformation. Right? People think, okay, yeah, with today's technology, you could recreate it.
Yeah.
Back then, it'd be very, very hard to recreate that.
Yeah.
In a Hollywood studio. It doesn't matter the amount of money that you have. Right? So do I think he landed on the moon? Definitely.
Okay.
Right? But there's a lot of challenges to overcome.
Yeah.
And one of them is in Surah Al-Rahman, Allah issues a challenge that if you can come outside the boundaries, come.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he goes on to the account, and there's two things. One, he said he heard weird and strange voices, but he also heard the adhan. Okay.
Let's talk about this. Okay, keep going.
And then second one, and this is the reason why I believe, is that NASA has a picture of a line on the moon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? That line, and we know from historical accounts, and because we're Muslim, there's only one event in history that could narrate that tale or narrate that incident. And exactly, when the Prophet ﷺ split the moon.
Yeah.
Right? He split it and then he put it back together. Sure. So if we didn't go there, we wouldn't have found these signs. Right? And it's not, it's not biased in the sense because these are non-Muslims that are telling us this. Not Muslims.
So I'm going to come to Hafiz Bilal in a second, but this is I agree. I agree with both of you that I believe that he went because at the time, I mean, they videotaped it and stuff like that, meaning video recorded it and so on and so forth. So I do believe, because Americans' technology at the time was bar none, right? I mean, there might be other people whose technology is much better now than any, because we evolved in that field. So I do believe that he came down. I read an article, and if you remember Brother Isa, he showed me an article when we were younger. And the article was that Neil Armstrong, when he was done all of that, and he came back to Earth, and he was in his hometown in New Jersey, and he was walking up and down the street, and he stopped at a masjid, and he heard the call for prayer, and he didn't know what it was, so he went to go check. Long story short, in this entire article, it said that he asked the person, "What is this?" He goes, "This is the call for prayer." And he says, "Well, I heard that up on the moon."
Mm-hmm.
So he recognized the similarity, and he started to inquire about Islam. When this started to happen, because remember, first person on the moon, he was coming out just like you would now if you have such a big achievement, so on and so forth. You're going to get publicity, media, so on and so forth. So everyone was on him. They want to do interviews with him, shows with him, so on and so forth. He now starts to talk about this, and then all of a sudden, Neil Armstrong disappears. Hafiz Bilal.
Well, so that article, like I was mentioning to you, some people say, some people claim it was fake, some people believe it was real, right? But like you mentioned, you have this sort of figure that's important in the media during the current era that they're in, right? How do we make sure that he doesn't do or say anything that goes against what we want him to preach? We want to make him a tool for our agenda, right? Because if you remember that famous picture on the moon, what does he have in his hand, or what do you see in the background stamped into the ground? American flag, right? And how do you make sure that what he's going to do isn't going to go against what we want, what we're expecting him to do or say, right? So I'm not going to say anything fine outright, like maybe they did this or they did that. But if you see you never heard of him, or you never heard him speak on that topic ever again,
he's just gone. He just disappeared. right? And this is what Brother Isa was saying, that the minute he started to be inquiring about all of these things, all of a sudden he disappears. Sorry, Hafiz.
Look, you're the face of something. You're, like I said earlier, once the puppet master decides that your show is over, you're gone.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
You're disposable. Right. And you're replaceable. So that's the thing. Because here's the thing: if they went with what he was saying, that would have proven Islam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would cause chaos around the world.
Of course. 100%.
Because then it's like, hey, we were telling you guys for 1400 years, we were right.
Yeah.
But now here's the proof. Here's your own people saying it. So that's the thing. And it comes down to control. Right. So if you want to control the narrative, you got to squeeze the puppet at the right time. Right. Use it and then leave it. Right. And then replace it. And that's exactly what happened with that case.
And I also want to add this is that I think on a very high level, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
If you look at the past 6 or 7 centuries of history in the world, what was that age for Islam? Golden age, right? Of Islam, right? Where you had the Ottoman Empire at the top of the world controlling.
Years of reign. Yep.
Exactly. What was that time for the English and the Western civilization?
The worst. The drought.
The Dark Ages. That's what they call it, right?
Yeah.
And I believe at a very high level, they'll never want to see Islam flourish again, because what will it bring for them? Their Dark Ages and our Golden Age. Right.
They've read all our books.
Of course.
They've read all our hadith, more than our people. The problem is they don't understand it properly.
Yeah.
But what they did understand is that if you destroy the unity, which is the one thing we lack as an ummah today.
Of course. Agreed.
If you destroy that unity, you will happily keep them under control and you will be able to conquer them. Yeah. Right? And that's why I said the Brits and the French did that. Divide and conquer. And they did it all across the world. Right. And they're laughing now.
Of course.
Right?
Moving on. Neil Armstrong was a Muslim. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know about that. I haven't seen his shahada.
I think he took his shahada. I really believe it. That's just my thing. Maybe that's the conspiracy. That's why it's called conspiracy theories. Anyways, I have in my hand a beautiful $1 bill. Not so beautiful. Mr. George Washington. You can see that on the screen there. And on the back,
a little higher. Yeah.
There it is, Mr. Washington. It's the $1 mighty dollar. And on the back of it is the backside, obviously. And in this corner here, there's a pyramid. And there's the all-seeing eye above the pyramid, etc. Everybody can see that. If you don't, you can Google it. It's not a big deal. So I wanted to touch about this. So Hafiz, thank you for giving me this $1 bill. I'm going to cherish this one. But bringing me to my next conspiracy, Illuminati. Because there is stories left, right, and center about the people, Freemasonry, Illuminati, and how they control the media outlets and all of these other things. And the fact that they run all of the music industry, they run, movies, that industry, entertainment industry, so on and so forth, the media outlets, so on and so forth. Let's talk about the Illuminati. So we always say that the people that we see on the front line, meaning whether it's the presidents, prime ministers, so on and so forth, that behind them, they are the puppets, and that's why they get canceled out. So I'm using, Hafiz Yahya's punchlines here. But the ones behind the scenes that are controlling everything is the Illuminati. Let's start there. How factual is this? Is it true? Do they worship the devil? Are they have this big agenda? Are they behind every madness that's happening around the world? And do they play checkers on their checker floor with the black and white?
All right, so let's start from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
The first conspirator ever. Who was it?
Rockefeller?
Creation. I'm talking about
first
Iblis. Okay.
Yeah.
Shaitan, right? First conspirator ever. And so he was the first person that became a conspirator, and his conspiracy was that why should I prostrate towards Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam? I am better than him. I am made from smokeless fire. He is only made from clay and water.
Right.
So the ego. And then the result of that was that Allah allowed him to live till the end of time, till the day of Qiyamah.
Right.
But he had one wish, is to take as many with him into the hellfire.
Right.
Because he knew his inevitable destiny.
Right.
Throughout time, even before Sayyidina Adam came to the earth, from the time he was in Jannah, he was whispering in his ear.
Right.
When he came to this earth, he caused the first secret society was when he caused one of Sayyidina Adam's sons to
Be
plot
unhappy.
against
Yeah.
to plot against the other one.
Right.
That was the first secret society.
Right.
It was only for 2 people, but the first secret society. Okay, then you can move on to every prophet, to every major time and place. Right,
Yeah.
it's been there somehow, some way.
Uh-huh.
Right. The thing with this world is that it's run by a lot. It's fueled by the media.
Okay.
Right, and if you want to be successful on that, you have to do things because people don't want to see the good. They want to see the more extremes,
Okay.
whether it be entertainment, right? You don't just want to see someone sit down and sing a song. People nowadays, sadly, they want to see them dance and get wild and do all sorts of, very, very, I'm gonna say, unnatural things,
Right.
right? A human doesn't just come up with that by himself. A lot of these ideas, this creative, persona, where does it come from?
Right.
It comes from those whispers.
Right.
The other thing is how much you listen to those whispers. And now a lot of people, and it's coming to light now, it's a lot of people that are in that industry are talking about it to say that if you want to be successful in the entertainment, you got to sell your soul.
Right.
Right. So whether it be why, LeBron James does his thing before the game, his hand thing, or whether it's, Jay-Z or whoever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You got to sell your soul to become successful. Why? Because Shaitan will make you that promise that, hey, if you worship me, I will put you in the hearts of everyone else.
Yeah.
But the problem is they don't know the ultimate fate after that.
Mm.
That you may enjoy that success here,
Right.
but you're going to burn
Yeah.
for the rest of your life after. They don't know that. All they want is the nice now because they're like, YOLO, I only got one life to live. So, that's it. So do I believe? Yes, I definitely believe there is a
Secret
society, whether you
Right.
want to call it Illuminati, whether you want to call it the New World Order, whether you want to call it the Freemasons, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Right? Do I believe they worship the devil? Yes. There are cults that worship the devil, even if they're not Illuminati. There's just people that do that. And a lot of these people who are the face are not actually the face, they're just puppets.
Yeah.
There's an ultimate agenda behind it in the sense that someone is controlling it.
Right.
Right? And it's to their narrative.
Hafiz Bilal.
I mean, after that thorough explanation, there's not really much you could say, but all I'm going to say is this, is that if you take a look throughout history, where we are now,
Right.
the trends and the times that we're in right now, what's going on around us, what has happened previously,
Right.
if you still think that it's because there's nothing behind the scenes, there's no one behind pulling the puppet strings, there's no puppet master, regardless if it's one or if it's a whole group,
Yeah.
if you still think that, then I think you're insane.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
To see how the world is currently and where it's going or where it's been, there is 100% something behind the scenes pulling
Right.
those strings, directing things to go according to some direction or to some secret agenda or to some hidden
Right.
agenda. And you'll see that, like, even if in the topics that we discussed, or maybe in a topic that comes up, you'll see these sort of trends or themes.
Uh-huh.
They're not, one, obviously influenced by shaitan, right?
Right.
Influenced by the devil, but there is a sort of society or a sort of group of people that are controlling behind the scenes or are at the top of the world, and they get to see everything below them.
So I'm going to put something out there. I have 2 more things that I want to touch on. So I'm going to do it really quickly. So I was heavy into learning about Freemasonry and Illuminati and so on and so forth. To the point where everything is them. You can go to Yorkville, which is just north of Young and Bloor, and right on the corner, you see Masonic Temple. You see the signs everywhere. You see the pyramid, like I just showed the people. You see them everywhere. Everywhere. And the more you look for it, the more that it's so much that it's like in front of you, you just never noticed it before unless you start looking. Anyways, in Ajax, there was Westney and Highway 2, Kingston Road. There was a Masonic lodge right on the corner there. So one day when I was heavy into it, like try to find out and so on and so forth. And I knocked on the door and the guy let me in. And when I went into one room, he shut the door behind me. It was just very weird. And a lot of pictures of people, faces, like people that I didn't recognize. George Washington being one of them, right? But I recognized, but other pictures on the walls and that we didn't know. And then I said, what's in that room? right? And he says, "Oh, you can't go in there. Only members can go in there." I'm like, "Is this a club? Like, what is it? This and that?" And he says, "Well, it's not for you." So he started talking like this. Anyways, somebody came out of that room, and this is when I started digging deep into it even more. Was I seen the checkered floor, and the guy pulled the door shut quickly. It was very rushed. They'll take you for a tour and stuff, but they'll show you very minimal things, and they say, "No, we're just like a, like that club on just off the side of the road where you guys is that bridge where you guys live, just on the Port Union side. There was a club there. Remember one day we were looking at getting that place for the masjid
area
and stuff like that too.
No, sorry, the club. If you go down on Kingston, remember that party
That
type
Kingston
house.
Road?
No, I don't.
Anyways,
know.
but they're like they made it seem like they were just a club where people come in and they do things and they just party and have like some champagne and this and that. But then I obviously digging some more in, we found out that obviously worshiping the devil and so on and so forth. And then you see the signs, whether it's in music videos, whether you see them through hand gestures like people make and stuff, and devilish stuff that is now out there. But I do believe that there is a hidden agenda, and the agenda, I think, has to do with eliminating Islam and all of those things. And they're the ones behind the scenes doing all that. And I think they're very, very powerful people. And the nizam of this world, secular world, is run by people behind the scenes. That's just my opinion, if you guys want to add on it. But
see, because we're in a secular world, right? So the concept of faith is very weak if it's there. So now, how do you get to the hearts of people? There's only one person that will go to every single person's heart to whisper to them, and his little agents.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
It's the devil.
of course.
So he's the best marketer,
Yeah,
right? The biggest marketer,
yeah,
right?
100%.
And he will sell as long as you're willing to sell yourself to him,
Yeah,
right? Because he'll promise you everything you want, and people get it. But the things that you have to do, is it really worth it?
right,
Right? Whether it be a blood ritual, whether it be whatever you have to do, is it worth it?
right,
Right? Some people, because again, they don't have any morals, they don't have any of that natural, that instinctive natural path that a human being is born on, that gets wiped away with the secular world.
Right.
So because they lack that, they're gonna say, yeah, why not?
right,
Right? Because they don't know the ultimate reality at the end of the day. It's not just, okay, you think we're in just this life, but there's another life to it afterwards,
100%.
which, because we haven't seen, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. So the next one, and we're gonna have everyone can relate to this one because we all went through it just a couple of years ago. COVID-19. Was it real or was it not? The floor is yours. I will speak at the end.
I know you have conflicting opinions about this, but
Yes.
from what I know and what I've seen, and that's all I can go off of.
Yeah.
I know that the sickness was real, right? People did get COVID. Where it came from, how it came about, I'll leave that to you. Because you have an interesting point of view on that. But yeah, I do believe that sickness is real, right? I think it's still going on today somehow. What I don't understand is why it was blown out of proportion by the media. One there.
Okay.
All the lockdowns that happened, I'm sure you guys can touch on this. But what I do have some knowledge on is vaccines, right? Because when a so-called sickness comes out that there's no cure for, who's got to push out the vaccine? The big pharma companies,
Of course.
right? They've got the funding and they've got the money. They can sell the product at whatever price. I'm sure it's limited to some extent, but they're the ones that profit off the vaccines that they create. Now, in an attempt to push out a vaccine, you had you had Pfizer, you had Moderna, Moderna.
Moderna is a vaccine. Yeah.
Sure. Pfizer and Moderna. There was a couple other ones, right? In an attempt to push out a vaccine so quickly, I think they skipped a lot of the thorough testing that they needed to do.
Well, obviously, and here's my biggest one thing. Look, you know what made me Pfizer, I get it. The Germans, I trust them. I do. I trust the Germans. Volkswagen, I trust it. But
How did that turn out for their emission test?
that's so bad. But meaning it's believable. Okay, they're very honestly scientifically inclined. From obviously knowing about what they've been doing throughout the years. Moderna, another one. So I'm okay with it. But Johnson and Johnson, they can't even get baby powder right or cream, and all of a sudden they have a cure.
Mhm.
It just, to me, it just didn't. The I's were not dotted and the T's were not crossed for me because of how fast COVID-19, boom, all of a sudden Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson and Johnson and whoever else, and Jemima probably had one coming.
And the reason I brought up that vaccine is because I think it was actually a conspiracy. One, to get
Yes.
the most money that they could from selling those
100%.
vaccines.
It's a no-brainer.
But what they didn't what they overlooked was the consequences it had on people's health.
Yeah.
You'll know that after the months that people took their first shot, their second shot, you started to see these weird little side effects.
Yeah.
One in older folks, we know, at least in the
I
brown
wouldn't-
community.
I wouldn't know because
I know you didn't take it. Some felt pain on their limbs. Some felt pain on their limbs recurring, right?
Yes.
Pain on their legs or underarm or the same arm
Some
that
people got
shot.
severely sick too.
Right. Some people who took the Moderna, I believe it was Moderna, but one of the vaccines, between the ages of 25 to 35, had a risk of infertility. Right?
Wow.
Some had heart issues.
Right.
Or they were completely healthy before, but because of the vaccine they took, had adverse health issues.
So explain to me, Hafiz Yahya, this concept of, it came to the point where I think desperate times called for desperate measures. And I think everybody was at their low at that time because, look, you couldn't go out, you couldn't see your friends, you couldn't do anything. Everyone's wearing masks and so on and so forth, like you mentioned, like Hafiz Bilal mentioned. And I think they took the time to pounce on us, the people all over the world, and utilize it. Because see, here's the thing that throws me off. You took Pfizer as your first shot? Don't worry. We don't have any more Pfizers. Pump the Johnson & Johnson, it's still good. Or put mix and match and all of these things. It seemed like a cluster of events that was happening. And if you do research, and this is why I think it's a conspiracy, is if you do research on Pfizer and Moderna, especially those two, because they were the biggest players in the game, they've been sued multiple times for not testing out their products properly and so on and so forth. And there's been a lot of backlash. Sorry, go ahead.
So this is not something new within the big pharma and the medical world, getting sued, especially if you're a big name. But here's a question I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
How many people died before today that just ate a Tylenol? Just one Tylenol. Before Tylenol was what it was today, there's so many people that had died, right?
Alhamdulillah, I'm still.
I know. But what I'm trying to
switch brands though.
No. I'm not defending the vaccines here. What I'm trying to say is that this will happen because here's the thing: you have 8 billion people.
Yeah,
everyone is not going to react the same.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's going. There's going to be maybe good. There might be bad. That happens, right? Do I believe and I agree with Hafiz Bilal that it was rushed? There's a lot of things that were skipped.
Yeah.
Because especially with mRNA vaccines, they take a lot longer to come out to the public
100%.
than the amount of time they took to come out this time. Yeah. So a lot of things were because we're in a pandemic and people are getting infected and whatnot. We skipped a lot of steps. At the end of the day, the only people that benefited that were the people who were running big pharma.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it be Johnson & Johnson, whether it's Pfizer, whoever it was, right? And this is the problem. Corporations take advantage of people in desperate times, right? Now, our government was subsidizing it. Yeah. Our government was spending our own money like crazy.
100%.
And look at where they put us.
And they're dishing out money too.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is they basically said, if you don't get the prick, you can't go to work. Right? It happened with me. It happened with so many people. You can't go into the office if you're not vaccinated. The issue with the vaccine, now here's the problem. When you go to take your vaccine, right? You're basically saying, I can't hold Pfizer, Moderna, or the government legally accountable.
Because it was a pandemic.
Right. But I'm consenting to take this vaccine.
Right.
The problem is you put me in this scenario though.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take the vaccine, but you said if you don't get it, you can't work. Yeah. So where's all the freedom fighters now? You're impinging on my rights and stuff like that. Where's all that? Where's all that hype now?
Right.
Right. If you think that we live in a democracy, unfortunately we don't. We live in a stimulated democracy to an extent.
100%.
And that's the biggest thing, right? Is COVID-19 actually showed us we don't really have any freedom.
At all.
We can live tomorrow, like from midnight to night, we could be under martial law, basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it became, right? You can't see your friends, you can't go within 6 feet of someone, you know. And here's the other thing I don't understand. I'm going to sidetrack a little.
Yeah.
Why are people going after toilet paper if you're supposed to stay at home?
Use water. This is my whole point. This is why Islam is so beautiful, because we were taught the
Hey, who profited most on toilet paper?
Yeah, these Royale and Bounty. And,
Who's selling it?
Dollarama. Yeah, they did profit. I mean, there's a lot of people, but here's my thing is why I think it was an agenda is because how many people made billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars off of this because they were at the right place at the right time. And I think Canada we were by far on lockdown longer than any other country.
Oh, yeah.
It was ridiculous. Like always on lockdown, right? And my point is like, for example, there was a whole time that only certain businesses were allowed to be open, right? If you were an essential business, you were allowed to be open. The reason why I think it's such a conspiracy, and this is my whole point, there was one business that remained open.
Considered essential,
the LCBO. So when did liquor, alcohol, or beer, or any of that become essential, right? And then they played it like, oh, people, because they're home, and this is what they wanted. They're trying to push their agenda, which I believe, that this is a conspiracy. Because at the end of the day, and I'll tell you why. There used to be, I forgot her name, and I read a book, and at the time, because we were still going to work and all that stuff. And it used to be back in the day, and there used to be a show called Geraldo that used to air on TV. And there used to be a fortune teller that used to come. Sylvia was her name. I forgot her last name. Sylvia. You can look it up. She had long nails, like out to here, bangs, short hair, and she used to be able to tell the future. And Geraldo used to bring her on the show, and then she used to say all these things, and people used to believe in her, right? Anyway, she wrote a book. And she talked about this plague. And she said that the plague will come in the 21st century, and it will rock the entire world, and people will make everything that happened. People will make a ton of money, and people will go broke. Everybody will get sickness, and it will go away so fast, and you wouldn't even realize. Nobody talks about it now. Look how 2-3 years ago, we thought we were in Resident Evil. I thought I was going to try to get a shotgun and see if I was about to kill some zombies. Because that's how they played it, right? So they started from bats in China, and they were making soup out of these bats, and then all of a sudden, this plague went all over. Some people said Donald Trump, his army at the time, because he was the president of the United States, that he went out, not him, but his army went out, dropped the briefcase off in China, and then the vaccine started spreading and so on and so forth. Like, there's so much. I just believe it was set up to lessen the population, because that's what they wanted. They lessened the population. And I really believe, like what Hafiz Bilal said, it was especially for the youngsters during that 25 to 35, you said?
Something like that was
to make
30,
them
35.
infertile.
Yeah.
I really believe because they need to control the population. Look at China, look at India, so on and so forth. There's so many people all over the world that need to bring that down, and I really believe that. Please go ahead. The girl's name was Sylvia Brown, by the way, if anyone wants to fact check it.
So I agree with you there. So population control, if you have been doing your own research for the last 10, 15, 20 years, you'll learn that this is actually a problem in the world. We have too many people, we don't have enough resources.
Yep.
So how do you do population control? So
Right.
now I'm going to tie it back to everything we've talked about. Through war, through genocides, through getting people to buy things or consume things that is very harmful for them, through genetically engineering viruses, because that's the problem with the governments nowadays, is that it's no longer hand-to-hand combat. It's either cyber, it's either through some sort of manipulation of a virus or some sort of thing that you can't see, right? And and then they'll kill off all the whistleblowers, right. And so you're too scared to fight hand-to-hand, or you're too scared to actually say it. So now what ends up happening is that you do these things, right? but you show one face to the public, but your true face is something else, right? So you're truly two-faced. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, if population control is an issue, why don't you gather the 100 most brilliant people on this planet, and put them in a room, have a think tank, and come up with a solution?
Right.
I can guarantee you the solution is not killing, so many people.
Yeah. Right.
Right? The other thing is, now again, if you control the narrative, or if you are the victor, you control the narrative. So if the governments and all these people control the media, they relay the information to the masses.
Right.
Now, the problem is people interpret information very differently.
Right.
You and I can look at the news, we'll laugh at the story, but other people be like, "Oh my God, no, no, no," and
True.
whatever.
Yeah.
They'll have their own reaction. So the problem now becomes is that a lot of people, the way they play the story, because people don't do their own research and they only take their information, or their primary source of information is from the media, they start to believe exactly what they say, and the paranoia, and the hysteria that comes with it. And so that's why everyone is now, running to the nearest Walmart, dollar store, whatever, to get all the supplies, like they're never going to live again, or they're never going to be able to see society again. And, you're at the same time having to take these shots and all this stuff, right? But you're not realizing there's a bigger picture to it, right? Sometimes you need to step back and think. It's never to panic. Panic is never good in a situation.
Of course.
It's always good to step back and think, hey, I need to kind of see things before I go ahead and act, rather than just follow everyone around.
Right. Hafiz, Bilal?
I think on the topic of limited resources, finding an alternative for resources that are finishing or are finite. A few years back, there was someone who built a car that would run on water, not fuel, not gas, right?
Run on water.
Yeah, you just pour a bottle of water in and it's going to run.
That'd be good.
No one knows where he is now.
Not again. I'm
Consumer,
telling you
right?
this.
Okay, so here's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We actually had electric cars in the 60s or the 50s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's a reason why they didn't come out until today. And they're still kind of not letting them come out. Why? It's because we need to make every buck we can on oil.
Yeah.
Once we've depleted it, then we're going to go ahead and start doing the electric side of things.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why now, okay, maybe 2030 we might see a change.
Right.
But again, it's at the end of the day, it's someone's agenda.
Yeah.
Someone wants to profit, so they're going to create the narrative.
Of course.
And that's what I was going to say. Yeah, fuel industry is multi-trillion-dollar, industry, right?
Yeah.
You finally find an alternative. How easy is it to get water, right? To replace fuel, right? That's just a thought there. Something else just slipped my mind. We were saying, sorry. So one was the multi-trillion-dollar industry for fuel, oil, right?
Yes.
To replace the car there. He mentioned electric cars, right? Why did they delay it? And I'm going to tie this into what I'm going to speak about now: pollution, right? You have all these organizations, hundreds and thousands of them are out there that are preaching, hey, we need alternatives to this, or this we're using, it's harming the environment, or this and that. 10 years ago, we were buying plastic bags at the groceries, right? When we were doing our groceries. Today, what are we buying? Paper bags.
Yes.
We bought plastic then to save the trees, right? And now we're buying trees now to save the oceans from the plastic.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all a scheme, because all these big multi-billion-dollar companies, when they have to invest money or give to charity, where are they giving it?
Yeah.
Into these organizations that are so-called, the tree huggers, exactly, the activists or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And on the topic of electric cars, how do you dispose of lithium-ion batteries? Right? If the whole world is driving fully electric cars, or even the hybrid electric cars, those batteries that last 6 to 10 years, how do you dispose of them correctly or environmentally safe?
Okay, forget about the disposal.
I don't know, but I would assume chuck it in the ocean.
How do you get them? How do you get the material?
Right.
You exploit these African countries.
Yeah.
Labor by the truckload.
100%.
You don't pay them not even $1 a day.
Pennies. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you guys profit. You don't share any of the profit down to the actual people that got you to where you needed to get to,
100%.
or to be able to make that profit. Right. And then you're exploiting every single corner, every single nook and cranny that you can. Right? And I'm going to give a big shout out to Omar Qadri Saab. Where are your David Suzuki environmentalists with the paper? Right? Yeah. They're chopping down trees to make this stuff. Yeah. So where are they?
Yeah.
Right?
David Suzuki, I used to look up to him. All of his people are not the greatest right now because they're silent on many, many things. Last thing, because I know We're going. I think we're over the 1 hour, 10-minute mark. So I want to go to the last thing. I did want to talk about the Islamic aspect of it and so on and so forth. But I do want to touch on one agenda or one conspiracy theory that I think people are not really putting a lot of value into it. And what I mean by value, meaning not putting a lot of importance into it. But I think they are the new COVID-19, so to speak, quote unquote. It's the Alphabet Gang. It's the most deadliest gang in the world right now. LMNOP, QRSTUV. Now you see me, now you don't. But I really believe that this group, and I'm not, and we all, I hope everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I think their agenda is more detrimental to this world than COVID-19 was, and that's what I meant by that. And me and Hafiz Bilal were talking about before the show. We were talking about, look, at the end of the day, no religion is going to accept you, and Islam doesn't accept. So if there's Muslims out there who are LMNOP, then you're not going to be accepted by any religion because no religion talks about it. And in fact, the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Gospel actually has harsher, and you go read about it, harsher punishment for the Alphabet Gang. So my point is this: you live or you die, I don't care. Don't bring it upon us where you're forcing now, where my children are now being forced to learn about LMNOP at grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. And I don't like their agenda because you're begging to be accepted. Muslims came into this world, we don't beg anybody to be accepted. We live our life, we do our thing, we leave people alone. And so far, every society, whether it's any religion, I'm not even trying to force the religion aspect. I'm just saying we don't force anybody to like us. We live our life, we do our thing, we work, we make an honest living. We do try to do good things, we do nice podcast shows, so on and so forth, and we move on. Their agenda, let's talk about that. I think they're the biggest conspiracy. I think behind the scenes, that to bring them up and into the limelight, I'll tell you, just last thing before I turn it over to you guys, is that 20 years ago, you were not allowed to come out. You get what I mean? And it wasn't like that. Like they could have been in the closet, buried somewhere, but they weren't allowed to come out. It was not accepted in society. No prime minister or president was talking about it. You did your thing in the corner. You shut up and you do it there. Excuse my language, but it has to be said. You do your thing. Don't bother anybody. But don't force your opinion on me that I have to accept you. And that's because that's what I feel is happening right now. Anyways, I'll turn it over to the guys, to the brothers, whoever wants to jump in. And I think they are the biggest agenda right now. They have the biggest agenda right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do, especially when it comes to our youth, right? You mentioned one is their education that they're forcing it into the curriculum, right? That's obviously one concern. The second concern in relation to the educational aspect, at least with our youth and the kids, is that they're allowing explicit material to be accessible by any children that have access to the library in the school.
Yeah.
Right? This is a very big trend going on in America, and I think some parts of Canada also tried to have it.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're allowing kids to just pick up a book that has a lot of explicit material regarding that movement, and you can just start reading about it as a child, right? Yeah. And I think all of this is to lead up to one of their big pushes or their big agenda points, which is to allow children to have gender changes without the consent of their parents. They don't need the consent of their parents to get their genders changed. It doesn't matter their age. So they don't have to wait till they're 18 to make such a decision, right? Now I'll ask the same people, and you guys can give me the answers to this. If we remove the religious aspect, right, would you allow your son to get a tattoo?
Me?
Yes.
Never.
Right? And if you ask Noor, if Noor comes to you and says, Dad, can I get a tattoo, right? He says, I don't have to ask you, or I don't need your permission, right? I don't need your permission. And you'd say, okay, he got a tattoo. Cool.
Yeah.
But you ask that LMNOP guy down the street, you say, hey, he let his son get a tattoo. He didn't have a say in it. His son just went and got a tattoo. He said, no, he shouldn't have done that. He's too young to understand the consequences. That's a life-changing thing he just did there. He just got something permanent done on his body that he can't get removed.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that, it's okay. But hey, the son went, asked the dad, can I get a gender change? Dad said no. The son went to the court anyway, got it accepted, and went and got his gender change. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. there's no harm to him. It's not a life-changing change or anything like that.
There's a guy, sorry, Hafiz Yahya, I just want to put this out 2 seconds. That there's a guy out on YouTube, right? He's in America. His name is Matt Walsh. Go listen to him. We can go into this, and I think this should be one of the topics, the Alphabet Gang, and we should talk about it. But he literally scrutinizes every aspect of their belief or thought process. They don't even have a belief, but thought process. And he completely dismantles the ideology of LMNOP and the Alphabet Gang. So I don't agree to their agenda. I don't whatever. But just for the viewers out there, Matt Walsh, go listen to him. Guy's fantastic. He goes from university to university all across United States, and he holds seminars for these people, and he calls them out, especially trans and all of that. And literally he debunks their ideology completely. Anyways, episode.
So I call this a distraction.
Okay.
And one thing, first they started with alphabets. Now they're alphanumeric, and then eventually they're going to have
there's
symbols.
a 2 in there, I think.
And
No, there's a 2 and a plus in there already, I think.
exactly, right? So it sounds like you're making a password, right? Decrypt yourselves first. I think that's the biggest thing. They don't understand themselves, right? And the reason why I say this is here's the thing. We live under this, kind of false promise in the society that we have freedom. And this is the problem when you give humans too much freedom. They don't know what to do. This is why Allah sent, or every religion had a set of rules. Yeah. You can do whatever you want in between them. Don't fall out of them. Yeah. Right? The problem is, because you have no rules, you do whatever you want, and everyone, we're accepting, we're tolerant, which is great. But the problem is now they've abused the acceptance and the tolerance, 100%. And they've gone now to force feeding it down your throat. Yeah. There was recently a video study that was done, and basically what they did is they had someone walk up to a few kids, right? Probably about 5, 6, 7 years old, and they held $10,000 in cash in one hand, and they held a toy in the other hand. Okay, and they asked the kid, "Do you want $10,000 or do you want the toy?" And guess what? Each kid picked.
Please tell me it's not the toy.
The kids all picked the toy. Oh, so. Yeah. This goes to say, children don't know what you're talking about, first of all. They're vulnerable. They're innocent. Yeah. Okay? You're going to tell them that, I can be anything in terms of my gender or my identity. Yeah. I could be fluid. Well, why don't I identify as a helicopter? Right? Or if I go to the airport and tell them, hey, I'm a white man, don't search me. Yeah. It's not going to work. I'm sorry to say, but that's not going to work. Yeah. Right? So it's a false construct to distract you, one.
Or go into corner and say I identify as innocent.
Right? Like,
you get pulled over by the cop. He goes, identify as someone who obeys the law. I was not speaking.
Go to Saudi Arabia and be like, yo, I'm King Faisal. Yeah. Why?
See what happens there.
Right? Go to Parliament Hill, say, I'm Justin Trudeau. Yeah. Why won't they let you in?
It's not logical. What they're saying doesn't make sense to me.
Right? But this is what I'm saying. When you give humans too much freedom and they don't know what to do with it, they come up with things like this.
I think they're the ones who took the Johnson & Johnson. They're the ones who took the Johnson.
No, I want to add on to what Hafiz was saying. Yeah. He's saying that, freedom is okay as long as you're within the confines or boundaries of rules or limits. Right. What happened to those rules? Yeah. 200 years ago, homosexuality was a crime.
100%.
Something punishable by law.
Yeah. But this is what I was saying. The Old Testament and the New Testament, as long as the Quran, it's a punishment.
And those agendas and those movements are changing what people adhere to for moral beliefs or ethical reasons, right? Today, let me just finish this, is that when they've started to normalize something that was bad previously, these are the repercussions of what you get now.
Right. If you want to live and say we're in an equal and an egalitarian society, here's the thing. Fine. If you're going to be able to teach the kids all that stuff, I need to be able to teach the kids my stuff too. Yeah. I should be able to teach them about Islam. I should be able to teach them the Islamic angle. Christians should be able to teach their angle, 100%. Jews from their angle. Yeah. So why don't you let that happen? So in a way, you're actually oppressing other people and you're stepping on other people's necks just to promote your own agenda. Yeah. Right? And if you're so inclusive, why aren't you tolerant of the fact that some people just don't accept your view? They're not hating on you. They're not doing anything to you. They just don't want your view being constantly pushed down on their throat saying, I have to accept it. Yeah. Right? I don't. Why don't I have to accept being either a conservative or a liberal? I could be whatever I want. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Which is fine. We're not going to kill someone just because they don't have the same political view or whatever.
No, 100%.
And we're not saying that. We're not inciting violence or anything like that. But don't force it down, and don't try to, push it on people that can't make a judgment for themselves. Kids are innocent. They don't know better.
Yeah,
right? 100%. If you tell a kid he's a helicopter, he's going to say, I'm a helicopter. Yeah. Right? So that's the problem.
The scary thing is that they're asking kids now, and it started just a couple months ago. And they were asking them, are you a boy or a girl? Because Noor came home and he said, Dad, my teacher asked me if I was a boy. I said, heck yeah. And I'm like, good boy. And I went to the school the next day. I go, what are you doing? How can you ask a 4-year-old, 5-year-old these questions, right? They're vulnerable, right? You can manipulate the minds. And I think this is where it comes into the conspiracy aspect, is that you can manipulate the minds of a child because they're there for 8 hours of the day. 9 hours of the day or whatever the case may be, if they go early for daycare or whatnot. But 8-9 hours, we don't know what's going on in there. And a 4 or 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old even, I think 8 or 9, I think they'll come back and be like, I found this a little weird today, and come tell mom and dad. But up until that age, from JK to probably grade 3 or 4, 9 hours a day, guys, you don't know what's going on in there. And that's the scary part, right? Where people have told us coming to the masjid and stuff, and they're just like, I want to pull them out and put them in Islamic school. But this is the conspiracy that I think teachers are involved. And I think it's a bigger picture on the backside, leading to the Freemasonry, Illuminati, the puppet master, and so on and so forth. And I think this is the new show right now, because rainbows are in and black and white is out.
Well, the easiest way to conquer and destroy religions is if you destroy the morality within people.
Right.
Right? The morality protects you.
Right.
The modesty protects you.
Right.
And if you don't have any of that, you're like an animal. You're no different than an animal.
Yeah.
Right? So, ask yourself that question, right? That my morals are, and my views and my upbringing is what is protecting me. Mm-hmm. That iman and all the other things. But even if you don't come from a religious background, if you don't come from a religious denomination, even as a person living in Canada, right? The good characters, the good morals and values, right? They're the ones that make you, right? They're the ones that protect you at the end of the day. Right. So it really is. If you want to destroy a nation, destroy its morals and its views and its in the inside of a human. Destroy that, and you've conquered them, and you've destroyed that nation.
I agree. Listen, I can keep going, and trust me, I really want to, because I like where we're going. But I think we should pull it back now. Unless you guys want to keep going, it's up to you. But we can pull it back and maybe have a part 2, because I think a lot of people are gonna obviously enjoy this conversation, because there's a lot more that we can talk about in an agenda. And I think within what we spoke about, I think other topics are going to come out as well. So first of all, I want to appreciate the both of you, Hafiz, for coming. Alhamdulillah, great conversation. That's why I like having Hafiz Yahya, because he comes out with all of these little funny little one-liners. The funniest is when Sheikh Hamid and Hafiz Yahya are together, because then you get punchlines back and forth. So
the Save the Tree people are puppets, man. Look, boom, collaboration done.
Tree huggers. Shout out to the tree huggers. But Jazakallah for the both of you. Again, great episode, and I think everyone's going to enjoy it. So I appreciate. Any last words before we conclude?
Well, I mean, you can identify as a light bulb, just don't force it on me. That's it.
If any of the madrasa students are listening, do not act on what your teacher just said. Okay, that's a joke. But if there's one thing to take away, it's do your research on whatever it is. Be, now they say you need to be woke.
Yeah.
Be woke, but do your research the right way. And if you don't know how to do that, or you don't know what resources you should read or whatever it is, talk to someone that does. Right. You can always hit any of us up. And you can find our contact information very easily. Right. So, just make sure that you're not just being a person, a number, or the victim of the system. Right. Always work the system into your favor.
Right. Well said. Jazakallah, everybody. I know we went a little bit longer than expected, but we had a great conversation on conspiracy theories. Inshallah, we're going to obviously conclude now. So I just want to make sure that everybody shares this video, shares the link with their family and friends, puts it out there. The more information that we spread out to everybody, the better. Obviously, people can get equipped on, obviously, knowledge. So we tried to talk a little bit I guess, less on Islamic knowledge, but we still added our Islamic touch to it. But all of this conspiracy obviously has an effect on us as Muslims living in the West. So Jazakallah again to Hafiz Bilal, Hafiz Yahya for joining us. And we appreciate Haramain Studios as always as the new scene for season 3. And until we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.